Last week, U.S. climate envoy John Kerry testified before the House Foreign Affairs Committee's subcommittee on oversight and accountability. So here's a couple of clips from the hearing in which John Kerry was confronted about his use of private jets, first by Florida's 7th District Congressman Corey Mills, and then by Florida's 6th District Congressman Mike Waltz. So the neighbors down there in Florida getting their digs in against John Kerry. I made a couple of edits here for time. I'll announce where they are just for transparency's sake, but here we go.
For coming here, I hope it wasn't too problematic for your operational team and your private jet to get here.
So
okay, so that was just let me just replay that.
That's a little drive-by.
Yeah, a little drive-by.
Kerry, thank you so much for coming here. I hope it wasn't too problematic for your operational team and your private jet to get here.
So
okay, so between that and this clip that we're about to play, there was a little back and forth about Kerry's upcoming trip to China, which there's been some news about that where the Chinese have basically been a little ambivalent as to how cooperative they're going to be in reducing their carbon offsets, right? Those talks have kind of stalemated. This was on July 13th in the run-up to that trip. So that's what they talked about for 5 minutes. But then Kerry, it's interesting because there was about 5 minutes that went by of back and forth between when he took that little drive-by shot and when Kerry decides to go after him. If John Kerry were smart, he'd have just not acknowledged it. But he felt a need to actually pick a fight over the private jet accusation. That guy didn't grill him about the private jet. He just gave a little drive-by shot, and that could have been everything. Kerry, throughout this exchange, is committed to digging his own grave on this issue.
I just don't agree with your facts, which began with the presentation of one of the most outrageously persistent lies that I hear, which is this private jet. We don't own a private jet. I don't own a private jet. I personally have never owned a private jet. And obviously, it's pretty stupid to talk about coming in a private jet from the State Department up here. It just, honestly.
What he's talking about coming in a private jet. This isn't the Jeffrey Epstein hearing. We're talking about get it straight, all right? All right?
If that's where you want to go there.
All right. So if that's where you want to go there. So then later on in the hearing, this is Florida's 6th District Congressperson Mike Waltz digging this back up because Kerry opened it up again by giving that retort, by saying under oath, no, I don't fly in a private jet.
Mr. Secretary,
you can tell this is later on in the hearing because a lot of people have bailed. A lot of empty chairs.
In exchange with Mr. Mills, you just testified under oath that you never owned a private jet. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record article here from February 15th of 2023 that the John Kerry family private jet was sold shortly after accusations of climate hypocrisy. Mr. Secretary, do you stand?
Okay, so not only did you have a private jet, but you sold it after accusations of climate hypocrisy, right? Okay. So
well, that just shows you what lying scumbags these people are, because Kerry knows what he's doing here. Yeah, you know, the indignation. I never owned a private jet, and he knows in the back of his mind, well, you know, my wife owned it. Right. Okay. Yeah. He was hoping nobody would bring the receipts.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. His wife has been the breadwinner. This is a major, that was the big joke he made in the 2004 campaign about how both he and George Bush married up because George W. Bush married Laura, who sort of inspired him to, you know, kick the booze in the coke habit and sort of pull himself together. And then the joke was that Kerry got rich because he married the heir to the Heinz ketchup fortune. So who knows? Maybe they don't file joint tax returns. So maybe it's technically the case that it's hers and not his. But it's the family plane. Come on. It's the family plane.
Well, that's like the mob. That's what the mob does.
Exactly, yeah.
It was very easy for me to disappear. I never registered to vote, and everything was in my wife's name.
Right, exactly.
And by that testimony that you've never owned or
I personally,
your family,
personally, yes, my wife owned a plane and sold the plane.
Flew on
my wife owned a plane. Well, yeah, no, my wife owned a plane. I like how he doesn't say my wife owned a jet. He says she owned a plane.
Who amongst us does not have a spouse who owns a plane?
Who owns a plane. I like the choice of words there. He says my wife owns a plane. He doesn't say she owns a jet. A plane. What does she have? One of the Indiana Jones planes with the snake in it? No, she owns a jet.
She got a crop duster.
Right, exactly. Well, yeah, crop duster, right. She's got a private jet. That's what your wife owns, a private jet.
not in a number of years, but I have flown on it,
And
sure.
this article is not then inaccurate, that your family owned a plane, you flew on a plane.
My
Secretary,
wife
Mr.
owned,
Secretary,
my wife owned
here's
the plane.
here's the issue.
My wife owns
This
the
isn't
plane.
some kind of partisan gotcha. When we are asking Americans to make serious sacrifices as we transition for the common good, and your family and or yourself are flying around on private jets, that smacks of hypocrisy. It actually hurts your cause, Mr. Secretary. But I'll move on. I just want to know from a
Move on.
relative
Look, he goes back. He doesn't let it go. Even now, again, he's like, well, wait a minute. Hold on a second. I know you just busted me in what is at best just a really, really bold-faced hypocrisy. At worst, a lie under oath, right? But no, I'm going to go back, right? So this is both times they mentioned the private jet and they tried to get off it, and he tries again to go back and just
At
digs
least
even
to
further.
Set the record straight here. I do not fly on a private jet. I do not fly. I fly commercially.
Have you
on
flown
all
on a
of my
private jet since you've
responsibilities.
taken this?
I don't even order the red wine on the flight. I drink Pepsi and eat peanuts because that's what a man of the people I am.
One time I had the Salisbury steak.
Exactly. Exactly.
Just let me finish. I have flown 5 times in the last 2.5 years on Millair.
I don't
which you
check my
also
bags.
fly on,
I take carry-on.
or some of you who travel fly on. 5 times.
I keep my suitcase on my lap throughout the flight. That's how much of a man of the people I am. I won't check it under no circumstances.
I have a bandana tied to the end of a stick, as was typical of hobos in the Great Depression.
Otherwise, all of my trips are commercial
Have you
airlines.
flown on a private jet in a personal or official capacity since you've taken this position?
Possibly once.
Yeah.
I don't. I think. I just don't. I'm trying to think. Of
I think you need to take the broader point of how this appears to the American people
But no,
as we're asking them to take that.
Let me tell you why.
We're
not asking Americans. We're not asking Americans not to fly.
You know,
You're trying to create an unequal thing. We're not.
No, you're trying to create an unequal thing by saying we're not asking Americans not to fly. Now, it's not the case that all Americans are capable of flying private because it's extremely expensive. But that's a real miscategorization of the argument, right? I mean, nobody's saying people shouldn't fly. You are asking Americans to make sacrifices, right? I mean, you can't get a plastic bag anymore in a grocery store. As someone who works in the grocery delivery business, that is a pain in the ass.
It's kind of
to
a
me.
fucking pain in the ass.
So kind of a fucking pain in the ass, right? When I make a drop off now, when I drop off someone's Instacart, I got to make 5 trips back and forth to the car. You know, in the old days, what can you do? You lift all the paper bags, right? You've all seen the images, right? Your fingers turn purple because you just lift 10 plastic bags and you carry them all in. Now I can't do that, right? That's time. Time is money, okay? So you're asking people like me to sacrifice with the fucking paper bag bullshit. And meanwhile, you're flying around in the private jets. It looks bad. John Kerry was asked about this earlier this year by Yahoo News. Let's hear his explanation in defense of private jets flying into places like Davos and all these, you know, COP27, COP28 climate conferences, things like that.
You don't just bring your own bags?
What's that?
You don't just bring your own bags? I mean,
When I shop for myself, I bring my own
You're
bags.
in that line of work.
No, when I shop for myself, I bring my own bags. But when I am delivering people's groceries, no, we have to take the paper bags from the store. Because how else would I get the bags? I can't buy bags to deliver
because
to
they're
people.
already packing them.
Well, no, I buy the groceries and I check out. I have to bring the groceries to the customer.
Right.
So I have to take the bags that they give me, the paper bags. Because I can't afford to
right.
go out of pocket
Right.
for
Yeah,
5
yeah.
bags every order.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
then I wouldn't make nothing. Yeah. All right, here we go.
You recently switched, I read, from flying private to flying commercial.
No, I didn't fly private while I was in this job.
Oh, okay.
It's just
I mean,
a
maybe
misnomer.
once.
I've had 1, maybe 2 private flights, which were U.S. military flights in order
see.
to get to China.
His family plane, whether he was on the plane or not.
Just the tip of the plane that I was on.
His family plane logged about 300 metric tons of carbon output in the first 18 months of the Joe Biden White House years. Now, whether he was on those planes or not, we don't know. Maybe his wife was flying around on them, but the family plane, the John Kerry family plane, whatever it was, the Teresa Hines family plane, was active over the past few years. It wasn't sitting around, with no sort of carbon footprint?
We were introducing a new Dijon flavored ketchup in the south of France. It was very important for her to go and taste it personally. And I think you'll agree that Heinz ketchup has a special umami, and it's worth the trip.
Exactly. Sorry, I got to flag that comment for later.
China during COVID, where we were forced into that, but I fly commercially.
The reason I bring that up is private aviation is an example of something where people are starting to pay more attention, and but when people who go to Davos to talk about climate change fly private, it seems like they don't want to make.
Well, they actually, I've talked to them about it. They offset. They buy offsets, they offset, and they are working harder than most people I know to be able to try to affect this transition.
Right.
Okay, they buy offsets and they offset, and they're working harder than most people I know to try to affect this transition. That means what a lot of people say it means, which is they lecture other people to reduce their carbon footprint. That's what gives them license to have a big carbon footprint themselves, because they work to solve the problem. So they deserve the luxury of a private jet, because on balance, all the great work they're doing, all the great messaging they're putting out, all the real solid information they're putting out on this issue compensates, tenfold for the carbon footprint of a private jet. So he's on record saying, rich people fly around in private jets to various conferences where they talk about the dangers of environmental catastrophe. But because they're doing that work of spreading the word, that justifies their use of the private jet. He said it there. Whatever your calculation is, he's said it right there.
And if they were buying offsets because they get this criticism so consistently, they would have already demonstrated that. They would have, and that would have been all over the media. Look, this is how we offset the use of this, and you haven't heard of it. So he can say whatever shit he wants. If they were really offsetting that carbon every time they use a private jet to go to Davos, we would have heard about it, because the right wing, they're all over that shit. And there's nothing they like better than to knock down right wing talking points, right? Every time Davos happens, the right wing is all over the private jets. If they were really buying offsets, you would have heard about it. This is now, maybe they tell Kerry that, and maybe Kerry chooses to believe it, even though I think he's a smart enough guy to know better. But hey, man, it is that kind of hypocrisy that really fuels a lot of the rage at these climate movements. You've got in Europe, they're trying to limit what farmers can do. They're protesting. And so how do you make that case to them when it is clear that people like John Kerry, who are running around talking about this, much less the cast of characters at Davos, they're living large. They're living large. How many gardens do they have at their homes that are unnecessary? How much fertilizer are they using? How much carbon do they emit every year? What are they doing to offset that? It's just clear that they want you eating bugs, and they're still going to be eating steak.
Right, exactly. And not only does that fuel a certain rage, but it also, nothing can foster climate skepticism like that, because these people say out of one side of their mouth this is an existential issue that affects all of humanity, and then on the other side of the mouth they don't take it seriously enough to adjust their own behavior, which does account for a lot. Like, it's not like, it's one thing if, like, John Kerry were caught with a plastic bag, because plastic bags don't, in the grand scheme of things, don't make a huge difference, one guy's plastic bag. Private jets, that kind of stuff actually does put a tremendous amount of carbon into the atmosphere. Like, the top 1% of people on Earth in terms of wealth and income generate something like, I don't know, I don't remember what the exact number is, so I won't try and guess, but I feel very comfortable saying a vastly disproportionate amount of carbon into the atmosphere. Like, the richest 1% of people on Earth put more than 10% of the carbon into the atmosphere that's there. So it's very outsized.
Getting away from those individuals, we know 11 corporations are responsible for 80% of the emissions.
Right.
11.
There you go.
So it's not you with your fucking plastic bags. So so people can be forgiven if they believe that there is a global conspiracy of Davos aligned elites to turn us all into sexless, genderless, impoverished bug eaters, because the evidence certainly points in that direction.
Please clap.